if you want to go ahead and flip there. We're in a new series called Better Together, and I'm going to struggle tonight because I really hate using a handheld mic, but it's where we're at tonight. We're in a new series called Better Together, and what we're talking about, what we kind of talked about last week, is that it is much easier to follow Jesus with other people who are following Jesus than it is to follow Jesus alone. Now, we like to sell ourselves the lie, like, man, me and Jesus, it's just between me and him, and I don't have to be around other Christians. But we don't actually believe that in any other area of life, right? Anytime we're passionate about something, we love something, we want to take part in something, we want to do it with other people who have a passion and love those things. And it starts to begin to dictate different areas of our life. And so within that, right, I run. It's just what I do. Like, someone asked me today, why do you run so much? Because it's the only thing I can do. I'm not good at anything else. And it's like either this or stay at home and play video games all day. And I do sometimes do that too. So within that, I was out at the high school today working out. Coach Schrader was one of my coaches when I was in high school. And so I like to go out there and work out with them and follow them and watch them compete at state and all that kind of stuff. And when I was out there, I was getting ready to warm up, and Chris, he's this old Australian dude, and so he's got a weird, funky accent, and he kind of yells at me and goes, "Oh, buddy, you look fit." And that's pretty spot on to his accent if you've met him at school. And which is not something that's often told to me. Like, at 6'2" and 140 pounds, no one goes, "That's a specimen of fitness." You know, like that doesn't happen, right? Like, I'm not gonna be an Instagram model anytime soon. Like that only happens in the running world, right? Like when they're like, "Oh man, he looks like he hasn't eaten for 30 days. He must really be on top of his game. He's just looking fast." Like, that only happens in the distance running world. And running has really kind of defined my life, really since I was like 14. It really decided the money that I spent, the things that I did, or the things that I couldn't do on the weekends because I was racing or I was always working out. I didn't drink a Coke for like 4 years in high school because I was convinced that it was going to poison me and kill me and ruin my running career. Right? It dictated the girls that I dated and the people that I spent the time that I was around. Like, it dictated really every part of me. But then there's this really weird thing that you wouldn't think that running would kind of change about my life. And what it was is that when I was in middle school, I had all this like teenage angst, and I skateboarded, and I wore a lot of black, and I listened to screamo music, and it was awesome, and I still have that version of me living in my core, which is a really beautiful thing. And some of you are like, "No, it's not, your music's stupid." I get it. I don't like your music either. And so we look at those things, but with that, I had a dope flow. Okay, I had really long hair, just like kind of down to here, a nice over. All right, everything going on here I'm just walking around the halls doing this all day, right? And it just never cut it, just let it grow. And then my freshman year of high school, I joined the cross-country team, and I ended up being pretty good. I was in the top 10 on our team, and top 10 in cross-country, 7 is varsity, and then the next 3 are alternates. So we kind of got to travel with the team. I got to be there at a lot of different things as a freshman. And when we approached district, they were like, "Hey, there's something that we do for team unity, something that we do together, and it's this: we all shave our heads together." And I remember sitting there like, "Say what? I've been working 3 long years on this. I got in multiple fights with my mom. I ain't doing that. What?" And they're like, "Yeah, we all shave our heads together. And we don't like go somewhere and shave it. We just sit down in the varsity locker room, and we will shave your head for you." And I'm like, "Nah, man, I seen your hands. They're real shaky. No, I ain't doing that." And they're like, "No, man, like if you want to be a part of us, you've got to shave your head." And so the picture that's about to be on the screen is sophomore year Lane. Oh, dang, son. Shorty shorts and a beautiful shaved head, screaming because I'm a wimp. Okay. And so I had this haircut for 3.5 years of my life. District meet, shaved my head, and then I was like committed to it at that point. I was like, you know what? This is easier, and it doesn't cost any money. I'm not going to go get a haircut. I'll just sit down in a chair, and some dude named Tim will shave my head for me. It'll be great. And so that's what I did, and it dictated that. And it was this weird moment where you can take it off now. I was like, I don't know why you got to do that to me. That's rude. Okay. This crazy moment where what I realized is I was willing to sacrifice a little bit of my pride, a little bit of my desires, a little bit of my dating life, right, for the sake of unity with a bunch of weirdos who ran around in short shorts every day. Like, I was like, lay it all on the altar. Okay, this is who I am. This is who I'm going to be. And what I find largely is that you and I, man, we will sacrifice a little bit, a part of ourselves that we think is important for the sake of unity with one another, that we actually really desire unity and closeness and togetherness with other people really to our core. Like, even the most introverted of people, like, even though being alone sometimes will refresh you, like, Even the most introverted of people I've met don't want to be alone all the time. That's why social media is so successful, because we're like, man, I never have to be alone. It's like I'm with 7,000 people all at one time, all the time. And so we look at those things and we go, man, we really desire this togetherness. We really desire just being with one another. But then we're kind of at war with this other part of ourselves that we also constantly find ourselves in conflict with one another, right? Like we deeply desire to be together, but then it's election season and everything can burn, okay? Like we deeply desire togetherness, but then we're like, but I don't really want to like leave the couch today and put an effort in, right? You'll kind of figure this out if you decide to go to college and you do undergrad and you live in a world where 4 years, an entire city is dedicated to 18 to 22-year-olds, which is a bad idea. And you'll go and everything will be for you. And you're like, there's 70 million clubs and I'm going to be in them all. And I'm going to have all these friends. And then you'll hit this really weird moment called graduation. And then they're like, go into the real world where no one cares about 22-year-olds. And you look around and you go, I used to have friends and now I have no one. Right? Like you'll realize that deepest desire, there is like everyone from 22 to 30 that I've met is like, everything after college is really hard. It's because all of a sudden you had everyone and then you have no one. You're like, there was a togetherness that I used to have when there were 27 people in my house making pancakes at 2 a.m. that I think I miss, that I think that I enjoy. And we start to miss this togetherness, and then we keep looking back into what is this conflict within me that keeps refusing to find that with people? And what I mean by that is we kind of pick and choose dumb things to draw the line on, right? So what was interesting about when I shaved my head is there was a whole plethora of other dudes in the locker room that were like, no, man, that's dumb. I got to shave my head to fit in. I was a conformist. I was like, take it all. And other dudes were like, nah, man. And it was like a line in the sand. We were like, okay, well, join the football team. Like, I don't know. We don't want you here anymore because of a haircut, which is dumb, but also kind of common. And so we like look at these things. We go, we pick all these weird things. We go, oh, well, man, like those aren't really my people over there. Or, oh, well, these aren't my friends. We don't have this in common. Or, oh, well, they don't really sit at our lunch table. Or we can't really do these things. And we begin to look at that across the room. It is so insane to me how often in a room of maybe 80 high school kids, how many of you don't actually know each other who are here every single week? Maybe sit next to each other, or just a row over from each other, or whatever it is. Or how many of you have decided what you feel about the other person that's in the room because of different things that they do, where they go to school, what family they're a part of, what sport that they play, or what friend group that they're in, and that they don't get to be a part of you or a part of your group and what you do. And we look at that, and this deep desire for togetherness goes, man, I really want unity as long as it looks like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G1, G2, G3. Right? As long as it matches my 27 rules for unity and what that looks like. And it becomes an issue when we start to bring that culture into the church, and then we look at the church, and people from the outside, here's like the number one reason whenever I have a conversation with someone that we haven't seen them in the loft in a while, they haven't been at church in a while, and it's because they never felt like they belonged or plugged in, or even worse, that they were mistreated by the people who are here. And we go, man, the largest issue that people have with the church really oftentimes doesn't even have anything with what we believe. It has everything to do with how we behave and how we treat them and whether or not they found a place with us. Because they walked in and what they found is the same dysfunction that they found in their middle school when they got cut from A team to B team. And they find the same dysfunction that exists in their locker room. And I told this story to my small group last week, I think. There's a kid that did run cross country with me right around the same time. And by my senior year, I got to be captain, not because I was fast, but because I was loud. And in the locker room, there was a separation. And in the varsity locker room, we had a TV, we had a couch, we had an Xbox, we had a fridge. It was like a dorm room. It was like every high school kid's dream, like, this is where I want to live. And so we did live there. It was pretty great. And this kid walks up to another guy that I ran with. He's come and done citywide for us. Michael Pickle has been a leader with you guys. And he lives back in Georgetown. His wife's a teacher. And this guy walks up to his wife and goes, hey, are you married? Because he recognized the last name Pickle, and not everybody had that last name. And she goes, yeah, my husband's name is Michael. Thank you for asking me a weird question. No, I won't go out with you. And he looks at her and he goes, oh man, tell your husband that I said hi. And she goes, oh, okay, I will. Who are you, strange man? And he looks back and he goes, oh, I ran cross country with Michael and Lane, which is weird that he would mention my name. Like, that's how passionate this kid is about how awful I was to him. And he goes, they were pretty much the worst people I knew. Dead serious. He's like, they were awful. I hated running. Like, I hated like more than normal people hate running, right? Like, I hated being there and being a part of that team. And so, as a believer, even in my locker room, man, it was like, oh, I find the same dysfunction with this kid who says he's a Christian, who prays for us before we race, as I do in every other area of my life. And it's deep, man, because we look at the church and we go, oh, yeah, we actually fight in the same way at the church, or we dislike each other in the same way in the church, and we talk about each other the same way in the church as we would in almost every area of life, and it creates this thing that we go, oh man, we want togetherness, yet something inside of me keeps pushing everyone away from me and begins to create splits within all of us. And so we find ourselves in 1 Corinthians 12, and Paul really begins to speak to that. And so Paul talks into the church at Corinth, and he's writing this letter, and there's all these issues on sex and marriage and what they eat and how they take the Lord's Supper and all this stuff. It's like a soap opera in here. It is crazy madness. I got to teach it last week at Camp Peniel. It was a ton of fun. And we're like looking through it, and we're like, oh my gosh, this church is like one of the most broken churches that I have seen. And they're divided by the way that they hurt each other and the way that they sin against each other and the things they believe and the fact that some of them think that they're better than other people. That there are Christians that go, well, I'm a better Christian than you because I can preach. Which does not make anybody better than anybody because of what they can do, because of what God has gifted them with. And so Paul begins to speak into it, and he speaks into this idea that the church is like a body, a physical arms, legs, torso, head, ears, mouth, body. And that each person kind of looks like all these parts, but here's the major function of it that we see in chapter 12. And if you can look over into verse 12. And it says this, just as the body is one and has many parts, and all the parts of that body, though many, are one body, so also is Christ. And for we were all baptized by one Spirit into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and we were all given one Spirit to drink. What he says is, you come from different racial backgrounds, you come from different economic backgrounds, you've got different genders that are present, you've got you have a great amount of differences, and when we look at our differences and we go, that means that person can't be with my people, Paul says, no, that means that person must be with your people because you need all of those to function well. What's interesting about the body is that the body, when working well, takes care of itself. It fights off disease on its own. It fights off sickness on its own. It takes care of itself. I can move my body in the same direction even while every part of me is doing different things, and such should be the church. That when part of us is sick, we begin to take care of ourselves. We go fight for those people. We go fight for healing for those. We talked about that 2 weeks ago in fighting sin. When we haven't seen someone in a while, that we actually, miss them and wonder where they've been. Because they're part of us. And they're not part of us because they do the same things that we do, or because they're just as good as us, or because they play the same sports that we do, or because they talk the same way we do, or whatever it is. They're part of us because at some point in their lives, they've decided, I want to give my life to Jesus. And at some point in your life, you maybe decided, man, I want to give my life to Jesus, and that is where unity is found. And it's not just about that you've given your life to Jesus. It's literally centered on Jesus. That you are his, that he owns us as Christians. As people say, when we give our lives to him, we are his. He has bought us through his death and resurrection, and we can find unity there. But the problem is that our friends in our schools look at us and they go to the same church, but they treat each other miserably. Why would I want to be there? What kind of Jesus is that? Man, the problem is that when Jesus speaks to disciples and he says, people will know that you are mine by the way that you love each other, and then we don't love each other, then people wonder, what kind of Jesus is that? But our unity should be centered on something so much bigger than ourselves. Why is it that we can find so much unity around a jersey, or around a GPA, or around a club, or around who we're dating, or around a Netflix series, but we can't around Jesus? That doesn't make any sense. It makes my Jesus very small. But he's not. And it's a bad portrayal of what Christianity is to the rest of the world, because it begins to kind of just look like a club of people who sing and watch an idiot speak, instead of a group of people who love each other because Christ has saved them. That's two totally different groups. It's interesting because we look at the church, and the church fights about stupid things. We just do. Ridiculous things. Churches will fight about paint on the walls. You're like, who cares? It's paint. Christians are tough, right? Because we have sin. Like, we have struggle. We get things wrong. We're messed up. We really are. We're trying really, really hard to follow Jesus, but sometimes it looks like we're being drugged, right? And it's interesting because I think about this. On the very beginning of going through teenage angst, I started skateboarding with my group of friends. I was in 5th grade. And I still have a skateboard in my office. I wish that I could actually get out and go a little bit more. It used to be the only thing I would do. We would skate all around town. We were like, there's a no skateboarding sign. That's exactly where I want to be. And we would go there, and my hair's, slowly starting to grow in. I'm wearing jeans in July, which is a ridiculous thing. Nobody should ever do that. And within that, there's this thing that you might not know about, skating and stuff like that, but it kind of operates just like a lot of other sports or anything like that, is that there are teams. They're largely created by companies who sponsor their skaters. So you could go skate for different companies, like Zero, Almost, S Shoes, things like that. Those things mean nothing to 99% of you, but to me, they meant a lot at the time. And so we would go and we would skate, and we were like, man, we would watch all these videos of these guys who skated for these companies, and we were like, that kind of just looks like a group of friends who skate together and all wear the same clothes. I think we could do that. And so in 5th grade, we were like, man, we're going to be sponsored. Now here's the problem. No one sponsors 11-year-olds unless you're insane. That's not entirely true. I met a 12-year-old once who was sponsored. But largely no one sponsors 11-year-olds. And so we were like, we don't need a sponsor. Our buddy's dad had a burger joint in Austin. We're like, we're just going to all wear the same shirt from the same burger joint. And that's going to be our team, and we don't need nobody else. We'll be sponsored in T-shirts, and T-shirts only. There's a problem because you can't skate on T-shirts, so we still had to pay for all the rest of the gear. And what was happening is we would skate together, and one of these guys was the ringleader. Again, I'm a conformist for most of my adolescent life. He looks and he goes, no, we need to be different, because that's really what skating is founded on, rebelliousness, being different, being edgy, right? I'm wearing black to school, and my parents are like, oh, no. And I'm like, yeah, black. And my friend goes, you know what would make us more different? I'm like, yeah, tell us. He goes, if we wore our shirts inside out, I'm like, yeah, tell us more. He's like, and backwards. And I'm like, I'm lost. And we look at him and we go, okay, because we're 11. What do we have to lose, right? The girls in class, they don't like us anyway. Might as well. And so we're walking around with our shirts inside out and backwards. We got a little tag running around the front, just walking in our lines in elementary school going, because it's in our way, right? And then those of us that are ahead of our time, we got the tagless shirt. So we're just walking around like, what? I don't know why you guys are so bothered. And we look at that, and what's so interesting is some of the friends that we would skate with were like, dude, I'm not doing that, which really makes them the edgy and rebellious ones, which is very interesting. They're against the against. Double rebellion. And they go, no, man, we're not doing that. And we're like, you know what? Fine, you can't be in our team. We wear shirts from burger places. And they're like, okay. My mom and dad still buy my clothes. I'll be all right. And we drew the line in the sand, again, over dumb things. We're like, no, they won't dress like us. No, we're dressing cool. This is going to be a thing. We're going to do it till we're seniors. We did, and we did it about 2 weeks because we wanted friends again. And we look at that, and in middle school, I'm talking about that, and this girl in the front row goes, that's dumb. I'm like, you know what? That is dumb, and that's the point of the story. Sometimes we start walking with Jesus, and we start the beginning of our relationship with Jesus. We go, man, I want to do everything that God wants me to do, and I want to fall in love with him. And we start studying Scripture, and there is a lot of good stuff in here that talks about how to live or how not to live or how to act and all this stuff. And we start living and dying on that hill instead of the hill that is the one that Jesus Christ died on and then rose again. And so we start going, no. Here's this tiny little thing in this moment in Scripture. And if you can't get in line here, then I'll start my own church, and it'll be me and my 2 friends. You can't come into my small group. No, you can't come to church with me. No, you can't come and do these things because we have tiny, little, dumb, inside-out, backward shirt-sized issues with those people that keep us from going, you know what? Maybe I'm messed up and love Jesus, and maybe you're messed up and love Jesus, and maybe we can be okay with just that for now. Maybe Jesus died to bring us all into an equal playing field the moment we give our lives to him. Because we stop caring about glorifying ourselves like they do at the church in Corinth, and we start caring more about glorifying him. And what we realize is that the more people that can come to know him and give their lives to him, that we will be better together. That there will be greater hope, that people will look at the church and they will actually look and go, whoa, it's not as bad as I thought. Just maybe. Maybe you can find unity with the person that sits on the other side of the room with you on Wednesday nights, that goes to a different school than you, that talks different than you, that has a different group of friends, that smells funny because they didn't buy deodorant this week. Like maybe? Paul addresses way more divisive issues in their time. Jews and Greeks, it's like the hardest racial divide of its time. Slaves and free, it's one of the hardest economic lines of its time. He says there's no division there. We can all be one in Christ because he has all bought us the same way. Man, here's the deal. If you haven't given your life to Jesus, my hope is that you would talk to a leader tonight and be like, man, like that actually sounds like a Jesus worth following. Not a one punching me in the face trying to get me to come to church, but one rather that wants me to be in a community of people that love them. Man, in a couple weeks, it says that we're all baptized into one spirit. Man, in a couple weeks, we're going to celebrate in baptism. Largely, all we're doing is celebrating that you've given your life to Jesus and you're one of us now. It's a public profession of saying, hey, I believe what you believe. I'm following the Jesus that you follow. Maybe that's something that you need to move forward in. Or maybe it's a small group. It's just time for you to decide, are we actually a small group? Are we just like a couple sets of people who will hang out on Wednesday night? I'm going to pray for us. You guys can grab a shirt on the way to your small groups. Get into your small groups and have a conversation because we had to go a little bit long because of humans versus zombies. And then come back, and before you leave, you can register on that sheet and text in the code. Man, my hope is this. When you move into a town and you become the youth pastor, you can ask around and start to say, hey, what's kind of the word on the street about so-and-so church that I'm about to work on staff at? You maybe don't lead with that because then they'll change their answer. My hope is that when people talk about the Loft, they say, I found a home there maybe even before I met Jesus. Like I felt loved, I felt connected, and I felt like they were all together. And because of that, I began to know who Jesus is.